What is going on, everybody? We have Spicy Aponte in the building. He goes by many names, but Jason Aponte is here with us on our weekly State of the Franchise episodes that we do. Jason, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in regards to the state of the franchise. But first of all, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great, Brad. It's always good to see you. And yeah, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but I have kind of retired Spicy Aponte. It's more about cold, calculated, passionate Aponte, but still at the same time getting that passion across without getting all sweaty and red in the face.
So Jason has retired Spicy Aponte. I bet we'll be able to get it out somehow, but we'll try our hardest for you guys. But we'll see how good Jason is today. Hell, you might even see some spicy sourdough today on my end.
That's what I'm looking for.
So let's start with this. Let's start with some of the injury news that came out of camp today. Or not camp, but practice today. Let's start with the most concerning injury news, and that's surrounding 49ers former first-round draft pick, Javon Kinlaw. It sounds like he is trending towards heading to injured reserve, and it appears he will be having season-ending knee surgery. What are your thoughts on just the saga that has now become the Javon Kinlaw story?
Unfortunate. Again, I'm not really into slamming guys in terms of where they were drafted, right? Like, he didn't draft himself there. But unfortunately, it is what it is at this point. This was something that was well known going into the draft process about this knee, and it seems to be flaring up. In terms of what it does to the team, his run stuffing ability is there. Even if he's not necessarily the person that is stopping it, he's occupying two blockers, allowing someone else to get there. And that's going to be sorely missed with this team. You saw what Jonathan Taylor was able to do last week. And I think that a little bit of that had to do with the fact that Kinlaw wasn't there. There just wasn't enough push up the middle. So in terms of what happens with this team, it's not good. In terms of, talking about where he was selected, what the absolute, what the value is brought back from it. Obviously, it's not what you want, but it's unfortunate, and it's something that is a little bit of a concern for people who were concerned with the pick in any way. Is that you didn't manage this thing? How does this get here? And all those types of questions that have been asked, especially now that we're in the year 2021, when it seems like high ankle sprains are gone, but calf injuries are the new thing that are floating through the team. But for Kinlaw, for this team, it's a bummer. And, I'm not going to, pile on the guy, call him, whatever, people have been calling him. But it's going to hurt this run defense, as we saw on Sunday night.
100%. And losing Javon Kinlaw, regardless of where he was drafted and what was given up to get him, and the scenario that we hammered pretty hard last week, with it being the DeForest Buckner revenge game, which he succeeded in his revenge and getting the W for the Colts. It's appearing that whole situation surviving Javon Kinlaw is just really unfortunate at the end of the day. Obviously, we've heard rumblings of there being issues with the knees going back to college. So it is unfortunate to see that we are heading down this path of feeling like it's going to be something he will be dealing with for the majority of his career, if not his entirety of his career. It is a big loss to lose Javon Kinlaw, and you hit it perfectly on the head. I thought the fact that Javon Kinlaw could come in and occupy two blockers, that relieves huge amounts of stress for linebackers and everyone who flows over the top. So that will be missed, and that could, to your point, be a huge reason why Jonathan Taylor had the game that he did. But moving on and continuing on the injury conversation, Trent Williams' ankle didn't practice today. Deebo Samuel calf didn't practice today. Are there any concerns? Even though Shanahan said he is optimistic that Samuel will be okay, does that concern you at all, or is this just a veteran day?
I hope it is. I mean, I hope it is with Deebo, at least, and obviously I don't know if it's straight up being not forthcoming or anything like that, or misdiagnosing, but most of the time when you hear stuff, like Lance's injury went from something that was a 1 or 2 week thing to, okay, now it feels a little bit longer than that. So if you're a 49er fan, you have to be at least concerned with that. I'm going to take the optimistic approach because there hasn't been too much positivity around here, and we're going to get to more of that in a little bit, that he will play. He is vital, clearly, to what the 49ers want to do. vital. I mean, he accounts for about 43% of the offense or something like that number. So especially when you consider where the passing game is right now, how much of that flows through Deebo Samuel without George Kittle, it's paramount that he plays in this game. With Trent, you just have to kind of hope that it's just, hey, listen, you manage it during the week. He doesn't have to practice to play. That's not, even if he doesn't practice the entire week, he still has as good a shot as he did today, as he will on Friday, of making it. So we're just going to have to monitor reports and hope that he's good. Having said all that, Jalen Moore played very well in his absence. And I think that is something that's a little bit more encouraging. Obviously, there's going to be a drop-off when you're talking about the best left tackle in the league to a rookie starting in his first game. But from all things considered, 2 pressures on 26 pass blocking attempts, that's really good, honestly. And that front four for the Colts is nothing nice. So, I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, it's not a big deal if Trent misses, but I'm just saying you have to be encouraged with what Jalen Moore did. But at the same time, I'm not panicked either way. Let's just continue to follow the practice reports, and we'll see how it goes.
I think you're 100% on point with that assessment of the situation. I think Trent Williams is trending towards being back, but let's just say he doesn't come back. I think Jalen Moore showed against the Colts in his first start ever that he's more than capable of providing a spark on that offensive line and being able to step in and do the necessary job to allow the team to function still, which is a great sign from the rookie. I agree with Deebo Samuel. I'm going to kind of lean to it's just a bit precautionary more than anything else. It just feels like he's been getting used a lot. I mean, he's the 4th leading receiver in the NFL up until this point. And that's with a bye week in regards to receiving yards. There's going to be wear and tear that comes along with that. Could be precautionary. It could be, I mean, at the end of the day, football is 100% guaranteed you're going to get injured. There's just no way about it. It's just what injuries can you actually play through. So we're hoping that as the week progresses with Deebo Samuel, we will hear that that's actually good news, just a little bit wear and tear, and he'll be available because we need him available. Because transitioning that into the wide receiver room, Kyle Shanahan yet again had more interesting comments from his press conference today about Brandon Ayuk. I thought it was interesting, and I'll speak really quickly from my point of view, and then I'll throw it over to you. I thought when Kyle Shanahan was talking about Brandon Ayuk, saying that Brandon hasn't met the level that he showed as a rookie in the NFL, although he was saying it with like an upbeat tone, and it was like, oh, he's getting there. He's on his way back. He's just trying to get back to where he was as a rookie. In my mind, that's throwing off red flags because he should already be further along than he was than a rookie. To me, what Kyle Shanahan accidentally said is that Brandon Ayuk has regressed and he hasn't met what he was as a rookie. And 1 + 1 = 2. You should be better in your second year in the NFL with what you've experienced and what you know. Are you concerned about that statement, or what is your whole take on that?
You know what? You and I rarely disagree, but I'm going to go the other way with this. And I actually enjoyed the upbeat tone and saying, hey, he's getting there and he's close. And, I know that, we just got our hands on the film as well, too. But Brandon Ayuk's getting open. He's getting open. They're scheming him open. Look, I don't want to pile on to the quarterback situation. I understand that, weather was a factor. And there was a play where Brandon Ayuk, if the ball gets out on time, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't slide into his edge defender that's coming. Maybe he slides a little bit to the left, feels the pressure, steps up in the pocket, maneuvers the pocket a little bit better, gives himself time to toss it. It's a walk-in touchdown to Ayuk. So, listen. Clearly, I kind of agree with you there where it's year 2, right? Once you've been through it year 1, you should be able to say, hey, listen, I know what is going on. And again, remember, he was the focal point of the offense last year. So you would think that would help him going forward now that he doesn't necessarily have to be that with it being Deebo Samuel at this point. But I'm going to take it as optimistic that he's getting better. And I like the way that Shanahan framed it. And I think that he's still getting open. I think that those things are still happening. And anybody who's watched the film has seen that. Unfortunately, wet ball, whatever, quarterback, fine. But if he's getting open, he can't throw the ball to himself. So I'm going to take the other end of the spectrum on this and say that I'm optimistic for him. And this week is going to be a good chance for him, especially if, God forbid, Deebo Samuel's not there. I don't see how he doesn't become featured, how you don't manufacture those same touches as you did for Deebo Samuel with him in this game going forward on Sunday.
I think that makes a lot of sense because when you look at the entire situation as a whole, I think at the end of the day, what fans are getting upset about, and like something that I was stewing on as of yesterday, was just like how does Dante Pettis have more receptions at this point in the year than Brandon Ayuk, and he's only been active for 2 games, and
And more
that
touchdown
again,
passes. What are you doing, Kyle? And more, or what is it? Or more completions, right? Because he had that throw to.
more targets, everything, and it's like it's just like again, they're not exclusive to each other. They have nothing to do with each other. It's just when you put both of those things out there and you look at them next to each other and you start scratching your head, like I think we need to we're definitely moving past who's at fault. I don't really care who's at fault, whether it's Brandon Ayuk, whether it's Kyle Shanahan, whether whoever. Like I really don't care at this point, but I do want to see a concerted effort from the quarterback, from the play caller, and from the wide receiver to get this thing back on track. Hopefully, the tone that was used today was to kind of again push that forward. So hopefully that's where we're going, and we could really, really use Brandon Ayuk, especially against a Chicago team that's coming in limping. Do you think that we could see a Brandon Ayuk game this week, even with Jimmy Garoppolo starting at quarterback?
I think that it would be great to do it now, right? You know, this is the perfect spot. Khalil Mack's not going to be there. They have many players who are not going to be available, including their head coach, which some people have alluded to is actually a good thing for the Bears, and that's actually pretty funny. I won't deny that. But yeah, I mean, if Deebo Samuel's not going to be there, then it has to be a Brandon Ayuk game. But also, this would be one of those games. You know, think about the stretch of games that are coming up next, right? Arizona, Seattle. These are games that if you can get him rolling, get the confidence going in this game, and it doesn't need to be anything serious. It doesn't need to be a big blow up 700-yard game. Maybe it's 5 catches for 80 yards. Maybe it's, 4 catches for 75 yards. Just get him more involved, get him the ball more. And again, just build that confidence going forward because the season is hanging in the balance right now at this point, and that's the point, right? Think about how everything has gone wrong for the 49ers right now. They stand 1 game out of the last wild card spot. Think about that. And if they win this game on Sunday, they will jump up 2 spots because the Chicago Bears are directly in front of them. So again, a lot of negativity around. I'm going to choose to at least look at, what is possible right now and the positive, but get the ball rolling as these tougher stretch of games are about to come up because there's no easy games on this schedule. Everybody pointed to Indianapolis as, oh man, they got to win this game. They're so much better. Guess what? Didn't happen. So there's no gimme games right here anymore. And this is going to be an away game in Soldier Field, which I'll be there for. That sounds pretty cool too. I mean, kind of wish that it was a different quarterback matchup, but hey, it is what it is. But at the same time, get the ball rolling. You're not completely out of this, even if this team has put themselves in a position of hopelessness amongst the fan base because of the way that they've been executing lately.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they transition everything into the Chicago game. Trey Lance is going to be participating today in limited fashion. What do you think comes of that?
Good steps. I think that the biggest quote that I walked away from, and I know there's a bigger quote that we're going to have to address, and that's what everybody wants to hear about. But did anybody catch Kyle saying, yeah, after the Arizona game, I really felt like he was about to take off, and we were really excited to get him back in the building besides the injury, and then we found out that Jimmy was healthy. Does that sound like somebody that was ready to go right back to Jimmy? I mean, tinfoil hat time, body language expert time. That sounded like he wanted to go right back. There it is. Boom. That sounded like he wanted to go right back to Lance. And that's kind of where we were all at with that Arizona game because we saw, again, against all odds, with the game plan not working well, with them dropping passes, with the execution, with some of the personnel decisions, all of those things, the kid kept fighting. And I think that Kyle saw that as well, too. So let's see. Let's see. Jimmy's got this start right here. Jimmy's going to have to play very well in this start before things start to get a little bit hairy. And I really took that away from this press conference. That's the one thing that I heard that I said, oh, that's very interesting.
That's funny that you say that because I've heard him make very, very, very small references to that same type of communication of, well, we actually thought Trey Lance would have matched up really well against the Colts. I heard that comment maybe a day or two ago. But what we're looking at right now is which one of our listeners pointed us to. Let me see if I can get him up here. But this is Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo throwing right now today. Want to shout out Chasing Gold for putting this on our radar. That looks like a guy whose knees looking all right to me. I mean, what do you think, Jason? I see Trey Lance moving like that. I don't see a guy who's suffering too much. What do you think?
Right, and I scoured that Arizona game, like almost like Matthew McConaughey, that meme of him looking at the phone with the cigarette. I was scouring that game to figure out when the injury happened. Did he ever limp? Did he ever look like anything at all? Right. So I'm just going to take their word for it that it was a little bit more serious than they're letting on. One more thing I want to point out, and I don't know if this means something or anything like that, but I was invited to do a Colts podcast for the preview, and here's the first thing that came out of their mouth: "Thank God you're starting Jimmy Garoppolo in this game." That might be something. That might be nothing. But nobody wants to face a kid with wheels who can do things and improvise and can actually run the ball because of the stress that it causes on the defense. And when you hear other fan bases, when you hear other teams say, man, we're really happy. Like when Buda Baker said, man, it's way different when Lance is in there. When you hear those guys say that, it kind of lends to what everybody's been saying about, hey, man, start the kid. You know, he might be the spark. He might be that spark to get everybody rolling, right? And everybody wants to point to, well, Aaron Rodgers sat, Patrick Mahomes sat. Yeah, but when Joe Flacco didn't play well, they turned it over to Lamar. And Lamar was not developed as a passer, but immediately changed what was going on there because they had lost so many games in a row. So he doesn't look bad there. Again, I'm going to take their word for it, even though, you know, whatever. I don't know anything about what's going on with the injury. But I didn't see any injury, when I watched the film over and over and over. And literally, I watched it about 4 times trying to figure out what play it happened on. People have pointed to 3-4 plays. Oh, it happened on this play. It happened on this play. He gets up and he walks normally. Like, there was never any issue with that. So I think that, you know, when you compound that with what Cosmo's saying, how he looks today, this is it, Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, you're at homecoming now, right? You're in Chicago. If you're not going to do it now, you're not going to do it now with this whole team basically having COVID. Khalil Mack's not playing in this game. The Bears are struggling. They got worked. Our Prince is not looking good right now so far. Brad, we also got to take that into consideration as well. If you can't do it here, man, I don't know. I don't know what's about to happen going forward. And it seems like Kyle is starting to fall into that line of thinking himself.
Yeah, I would have to imagine he would fall into that line of thinking as well, because what we've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo up until this point, obviously we're going to look at the Colts game, especially some of those plays that he made down the stretch of just like, that was the whole argument. One of the awesome things about me and you talking right now and going through all of this, we were both at training camp. We both covered this team. We both saw Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance day in and day out. And I want to ask you this question, because we may have talked about this way back when training camp was going on and we were watching these quarterbacks go back and forth. Did you kind of sense what is going on being an actual very possible outcome of what we're dealing with? And that's the sense of Jimmy Garoppolo not playing as well as he could, and then the team losing games and kind of spiraling. Did you kind of see that based on some of the practices and how he was operating, how he would basically react to mistakes? Did you kind of sense like this doesn't seem too far-fetched from what we saw in training camp?
See, and that's what we were talking about. In any sort of training camp report that I put out, that, you know, at each day, Jimmy was Jimmy, and there was no change in the way that he was playing. He looked like the same exact guy. The offense didn't really have any juice. There was drives where it was efficient, where it was quick throws, everything, you know, worked. And then there were throws where you're just like, there he is again. And that's the thing. All this talk off the offseason. Well, Lance is going to motivate him to change his game. You know, Jimmy's cursing in press conferences. Angry Jimmy. The only people that are angry are us now at this point. That's it. Like, the only people that are angry are us. That's all. So yes, I mean, we saw these things, right? And in terms of bouncing back, that was one of the good things about Jimmy Garoppolo, right? If you check out his numbers after an interception, he usually bounced right back and he was fine. Another thing that he did very well was he completed on third downs. Well, now when things seem to spiral, they're spiraling now for him, and he's not good on third downs anymore. With Trey Lance, for a kid who hasn't played football at all, and I understand this is camp, right? But I can point to preseason games where it happened as well. If he missed high, if he threw an interceptable ball, the kid never hung his head. He just went right back and he kept firing. That's the thing that I walked away impressed with every day. The kid is 21. He's never played in the NFL, but he doesn't look like that at times, right? And that can all grow. And I think that that's the part that you should be excited about. So, yes, we did see this in camp. We did. We saw it every single day. Jimmy is Jimmy. There was times where he was very efficient and the offense moved. There's times when he made those, oh, no, Jimmy, what are you looking at throws, pick sixes to Fred, underthrown balls and things like that. And then there were those wild plays from Trey, also those, oh, no, you're a rookie plays, but the kid came back and he kept firing every single time. That's what you saw in Arizona. You saw it in the preseason as well, too, especially that Chargers game after he threw that pick, and then he took them down on that 2-minute drive on that touchdown that long throw to Sherfield that ended up in a touchdown. That's what you were impressed with the kid. And I think that that's kind of why we were like, hey, man, the efficiency might not be there all the time, right? But you'll learn to live with those mistakes because of the ceiling of the offense when Trey Lance is in there.
Right. And the whole reason why we could get behind Jimmy Garoppolo starting is he's the veteran. He's going to take care of the football. He's not going to put the football in harm's way. He's going to be able to read defenses and theoretically be able to make the proper reads, but it just doesn't feel like that's occurring. And one of the trends that we saw from training camp, which you and I have talked about on multiple occasions, is basically the opposite trend of what you were saying with Trey Lance. Trey Lance would deal, make a mistake, and keep dealing. When Jimmy Garoppolo was making his short to intermediate throws, let's say he did take a shot, or let's say he did make a bad throw, you could visibly see a change in Jimmy and the way he would perform and go about his business. To me, that was one of the first red flags of training camp. I just was nervous. Like, if we're seeing this now in training camp, what happens when he throws an INT in a real game? Is he going to be able to come back and keep dealing? We've seen instances like the Green Bay Packer game where he did have a really, really rough first half, but he was able to kind of will himself back into it to the point where they almost came away with the victory. But we've also seen it against the Colts, against Seattle, where it just seemingly falls apart. So the whole argument about the quarterback thing was, well, Jimmy is going to take care of the football. We have a good defense. We're going to play complementary football and run the football. But it just seems like the 49ers haven't been able to execute their offense. They're turning the ball over. And at a certain point, when your backup quarterback gives you a threat to run, like you mentioned how I think the Cardinals defense were talking about.
It was Buda Baker. Lance.
Right. So it just feels like Chicago coming up could be the transition barring health, because it's going to take Jimmy Garoppolo playing damn near perfect all the way throughout. We said this before week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo has to play perfect. He has to win football games, or else this torrential downpour of the fan base is going to come on this team, and that's exactly what's been going on.
Right, and if the 49ers come out and don't win this game, that's 5 straight losses. And only one of them is when Trey Lance started. And I felt like that was the game that was closest in hand. Like, that was the one that was the closest chance to win a game, right? The Colts game, right? And listen, weather was a factor for sure. But at the same time, rain or shine, the execution wasn't there. The downfield throws are not happening, right? Like, here's something I want to point out, right? How is it that the Colts identified, hey, this secondary is struggling. Let's toss it up there and see what we can get on pass interference. It's not like Carson Wentz lit it up. He looked awful in the beginning of the game, but the coach still had enough confidence in him to toss the ball down the field, and he gained chunk yards based on pass interference. There's never been a time where Xavier Rhodes got banged up in pregame, right? And this is not Rhodes closed Xavier Rhodes. This is Xavier Rhodes on the other side of his career, right? So I don't want to bring up bad memories, right? Miami in 2020. Ryan Fitzpatrick looks around, no matter what the play is. Okay, Brian Allen's there. Boom, we're going to attack him. Jason Verrett came into the 2019 Steelers game. Okay, boom, we're going to attack him. There's never been a time where Jimmy Garoppolo looks and says, Deebo Samuel's playing lights out right now. Let's get him on a go route and let's try and take a shot against Xavier Rhodes down the field. Maybe it's incomplete. Maybe it's knocked down. Maybe it's complete. Maybe it's a pass interference. The thing about taking shots is Sometimes you hit them, sometimes they, and that's how the Colts got down the field for the majority if it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor's runs and things like that. So that's really the frustration. Yes, the weather was a factor, but Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to do this in the rain, the shine, in a dome, in outdoors, nowhere. And that's the problem, right? How come every other team can identify weaknesses, meaning, hey, that guy's struggling over there, let's go attack him, or that guy's injured, let's see what he's got, let's take a shot. It's never that. It's never that. And I think that's more the frustration. And I know that the rain, yes, it's hard to throw a wet ball. People have told me that the entire time. I get it. I understand that for sure. But again, that's not happening in sunshine, in a dome. It's not happening at all. Not happening at all. So.
Sounded like you're going to go down like a Dr. Seuss, like rhyming.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to say like Mars or like, other places, but no, I mean, I think the point is there. It's just, this is just not who he is. And unfortunately, other teams have that. For as bad as Carson Wentz played in that game, as bad as he did, because he had 3 interceptable balls, he looked awful. He still took shots. His coach still was like, hey, listen, let's go, let's try. And what happened? They got down the field, and that's basically how they won the game.
Yeah, so that you're absolutely right. It just seems like there is a disconnect in regards to aggressiveness from that position. And I think that's what you got to see a mixture of both. You have to be efficient, you have to be a little bit aggressive. Obviously, the Colts defensive backs were hampered, and it didn't feel like we tried to go after them again. We understand it was a rain game. We understand that even when I think that last interception that Jimmy threw was kind of indicative of that game. Because I think Cam Inman also pulled the next gen stat to be able to show the top view of how everything and the coverage moved throughout that play. And when you look at it, you saw it on the broadcast, but when you go back and you look at it again, it's clear that Jimmy Garoppolo is throwing into quadruple coverage when you have 3 to 4 other receivers available, and it just becomes, and we've seen that throughout. So we're not going to beat the dead horse. I think we understand that, unfortunately, right now Jimmy Garoppolo just isn't performing the way he needs to perform, the way this team needs him to perform. Has he performed in spots? Yes, but when we're looking at a what is he, 8-year veteran at this point, there needs to be a level of consistency, especially from that position, that we're just not seeing on all aspects. So with that being said, let's talk about something that has been real juicy in the 49ers world up until this point, which has been, and Kyle spoke about it today, and he denied it, flat out denied it. But if you had heard, I think it was from Sam Wickenshire, probably butchering his name, but he wrote a book. He was the guy that detailed some of the information about Tom Brady wanting to come to the 49ers. In his book, he detailed that the 49ers were offered a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo from the Patriots. Per the book, 49ers didn't take it. They move into the year with Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback. Kyle Shanahan comes out today. I believe Grant Cohn asked him the question, if that is indeed true, did you receive a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, or was that offered to you? Coach said no. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that there was 3 things that I went through when I heard the news last night. One was flat-out anger, and it's because of where it comes from. This is a person that is very tapped in with the Patriots. It's in a book. And don't tell me that it's in the book to sell books. Why put something in there about the 49ers? Because 49er fans are not going to buy your book for a little excerpt. So it's not like he's like doing it for clicks, okay? This is someone who has a very good track record also. So that's the first part that leads me to believe, okay, this is true, right? The second part was you start to really pull apart the words, okay? Price check, okay? And then in my mind, it unveils 2 scenarios, and both of them aren't good. One is less good than the other. One is way worse. One is much worse. But it amplifies the same issue. The first is if New England calls and says, hey, we're New England. How you doing, 49ers? What's the price on Jimmy Garoppolo? And they say, first-round pick. And they say, okay, thank you, and hang up, right? That's it. That's how that conversation goes. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is, did New England call, say, hey, it's New England. How are you, 49ers? we'll offer you a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, and the 49ers said, no, we want a first. Both of them lead you to believe this. You are overvaluing the position, and you have a problem with value, right? Okay? So that's the second part that I woke up this morning with. Clear head, had a cup of coffee, sat there, thought about it, and said, hey, listen, maybe this is what happened. Third part now is that Kyle Shanahan gets asked the question and categorically doesn't even dance around it. This is what I tweeted about last night. When he gets asked this question, because you knew Grant was going to ask the question. You knew that Grant was going to be the one who was going to ask the question. Categorically say no. And that's exactly what he did. No word salad, no dancing around it, anything like that. Absolutely no. Okay, now whether you believe Kyle Shanahan or not is completely different. But I have to say that he answered. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into that. But I love the answer. I love the answer. Because from what I grabbed from it, was Kyle Shanahan kind of felt like us, right? And me and you talked about this offline in text message. Think about this. In 2017, you got Jimmy Garoppolo for a second-round pick. Coming off of that 2020 season in which Jimmy Garoppolo played the way that he did and was injured, and you were able to recoup the same exact compensation. By the time you say the word second, I'm not even going to let you finish round by saying, yes, Jimmy Garoppolo's packed and on his way. But done. No questions asked. We're not even going to try to ask you for a first-rounder. So that's kind of where I got from it with Kyle. So Kyle kind of sounded like us, like, oh, if that was the case, I would have spoke to the head coach. I like that part of it too as well. So that kind of jives with that. Again, whether you want to believe what he has to say or not, that's completely up to you. And I won't knock you for saying, hey, I don't believe him. But I'll tell you this, he answered it the exact right way. Whether it's truth or not, kind of made me feel at least a little bit better, even if, you know, someone doesn't believe it. But that's where I'm at with it right now at this point. Should be a dead issue at this point. Either way, it's moot because right now Jimmy Garoppolo's on his team. He won't be next year, and it doesn't really matter at this point. But if any of those scenarios happen, that's the way that I kind of work through it in my mind. Right now, it's done. I'm not going to be talking about it anymore, but we definitely have to talk about it because it was such a, like last night, the timeline exploded. Everything went insane, crazy with this because people understood the same thing. But Kyle kind of jived with us on that one. Like, man, if they would have offered a second, Jimmy Garoppolo would have had his bags packed and they would have already told him to move. So I'm going to just, again, I'm choosing to believe Coach. I am choosing to not choose violence here. And I'm going to stick with what he said and hope that that's exactly what happened.
I think you not choosing violence is the correct move here. And I agree with you. I think Kyle did a fantastic job of handling a very difficult situation. The word salad, I like that because you're right. He just straight up said no. And what are you going to do? How do you like it's he said versus she said, like there's no, and that's it. It's dead, which is good for this team. It's good for Kyle. You know, I agree with you. I think the source is a very good professional at what he does. To make it into a book, I'm sure the levels of fact checking, or at least solid sources, have to be there. But at the end of the day, we don't know because Kyle said no, and that's exactly what he should say. If he were to admit flat out on that podium, yes, I had a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo from the Patriots, and I said no. Take yesterday and amplify that times 10. Because I think you and I are in the same boat. If the Patriots were to offer the 49ers, like you said, before they said second-round pick, we're saying yes. We're saying, send us the paperwork. We'll get it done, and we'll get moved on here. Because I think what we're kind of seeing is it kind of feels like we're having a trickle-down effect of having a leader who knows he's got 1 foot out the door with a new kid who's got 1 foot into his role. And it's just like it's created a bit of a situation, for lack of a better word. But I agree. I think with the whole notion of Jimmy getting traded for a second, did they do it? Did they not? At this time, you just have to just put one of these on. And if you want to believe it or not, that's up to you. But Kyle did a phenomenal job of just nip it in the butt, and it's a dead story now, at least in my opinion, unless some concrete, it's like someone really wants to go to depth to pull the info. To me, it's a bit of a dead issue, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think that how else are we going to know, right? You know, again, and I think that the validity from it comes from the person, the source, right? That you know, Wickersham is good at what he does, man. Like he literally is reporting right now from inside the owners meeting. He's the one who's dropping all this stuff about, you know, what they're being said about Gruden and all this stuff. This guy is legit, man. This is not an internet rumor by, you know, AD 49ers or whatever, anything like that. Like this is like actually like someone who legit knows stuff and is not a troll, right? So at the same time, maybe the facts are mixed up, but at the same time, the validity of it is from the source. So, hey, look, sometimes guys get things wrong. Sometimes they hear whatever they hear, but at the same time, it is a dead issue at this point. If Kyle says no, that's it. There's no one who's going to press any further, and there's no way to actually know. So at this point, why keep trying to press the issue and talk about it? Whether you want to believe him or not is up to you. But at this point, he squashed it. He said no, none, and that's it. And he looked Grant right in the face, and he was like, no, none, And I know I'm going on Grant's show tomorrow. I know exactly what awaits me and stuff, so I'm ready for that. But we're on with Brad right now, so it's time to be, hey, listen, matter of fact, done, and that's it. I think we should not talk about this anymore at all.
I agree. I think perfectly and eloquently said by Jason Aponte today. Let's move on to the next subject. I think we can at least kind of table quarterback conversation for right now. How do you look at the Colts game, and how do you transition and look and see what the 49ers need to do to travel to Chicago for a 10 a.m. game against a struggling team? But don't worry about Chicago right now. We know that they have some players on the COVID list. They're going through it themselves. What do the 49ers have to do to get back on track and get a W? And we'll talk about the next couple game stretch after, but just one game at a time. What do the 49ers have to do to get a victory against the Chicago Bears, a game that you will be at in person?
Listen, I know this sounds easy. I'm not a coach. Execute. And this is what, right after the post game when I did my show, I was pointing out, like right now, this is not a good football team. Talented, yes. No one would not say that, but they are not executing at all, okay? Defensive pass interferences, blocking misses, penalties all over the place. The coach challenging something that it doesn't even make any sense to challenge at all. Nothing was going right? And I understand weather. But these things have been happening in every single game. Realistically, and I know people don't want to hear this, realistically, the 49ers have not been executing since the fourth quarter of game 1. Let that sink in. Since the Lions game, this offense has been stagnant. They have made mistakes. They have not executed on the back end. Miscommunications with the touchdown to Mo Alley Cox. Jaquiski Tartt is telling Josh Norman, watch the rub. This is a give off. It's banjo. It's a give off. Josh Norman runs to the run play. Mo Alley Cox has a walk-in touchdown. Execution. Defensive backs, stop panicking. Learn your drills, man. When you're out there and the ball's up in the air, turn and look for the ball. Execution. Penalties all across the board. Holding on Ross Dwelly. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't skirt this either. Pocket maneuvering, understanding your blocking, your coverages, your routes. Move in the pocket a little bit more to give yourself a chance. Understand your situations, right? Stop putting yourself so far behind the chains. Listen to me. Wipe away the team name. I'm going to run down some stats for you. 1 for 11 on third down. 7 penalties, 122 yards. 4 turnovers. You would say that that's Jacksonville Jaguars ineptitude levels. That is Houston Texans ineptitude levels. Just because it's the team you root for doesn't mean that you have to look at it with rose-colored glasses. Right now, the team is not performing and not executing. I don't know how you get them to execute better, but all they have to do is execute just a little bit better. Limit the mistakes, and they should come out of this game with a victory. Less to do with what the Bears have going on over there. Horrible offensive line issues. Justin Fields right now, the game is moving a little bit too fast for him right now at this point. Not being put in good positions at the same time, not throwing the ball where he needs to, not having chemistry with his wide receivers. Head coach has COVID. Yeah, fine. All that stuff is going on for sure. We know that. But at the same time, if the 49ers just execute and just play, they don't even have to play phenomenally to win this game. Execute, do all the little things. Good football teams execute at all levels. And right now, the 49ers are not executing like a good football team at this point. Does that mean they're a bad football team overall? No, because they have time to change that. But as it stands right now, before they go into this game, the 49ers are executing like a bad football team at this point.
I think you're 100% correct. It all comes down to execution. I mean, that is going to be a word that is continued to use when talked about the 49ers. We're looking at it right now. One of the things that the 49ers had a really hard time executing against the Colts was the pass interference, getting your head around, keying on timing when a receiver is going to show that they're making a football move to make a catch, throwing hands, turning your head around, the small things. This is from today's practice from Ken Inman. They are clearly making an emphasis of practicing how to eliminate when you're riding in the hip pocket, turning your head, making adjustments to the football. So it's a good sign to see. I think it's interesting to see an NFL team practicing this and implementing this as almost like a knee-jerk reaction to a game, rather when this, I would say at this point of your career, should be kind of ingrained into you as a secondary player, as part of your technique and how you operate. But clearly it's been a point of emphasis here for the defense. Now I think what's going to be really interesting to see is how the offense attacks this, how the offense gets better in the small areas, whether that's reading and timing, hitting our hitch at the correct depth, doing all different kinds of things, offensive line, holding their blocks past 2.5 seconds, things like that. It all comes together. It all relates to each other. But at the end of the day, you're exactly right. It comes down to execution. And with the Chicago Bears, like you mentioned, they're going down their own path. And I think it's really safe to say that if the 49ers just focus on themselves and focus on doing what they need to do, regardless of how the Chicago Bears play them, if they can just execute, hit with timing, know their second reads, third reads, hot routes, all those kinds of things, make it easy. That's one of the things that I would personally like to see with the offense. I think one of the things that Tom Brady has implemented into his offense that works for him so well, if his first initial reads aren't there, there's a reason why James White gets so many damn receptions when he was with the Patriots, or why Leonard Fournette gets targeted 5 to 6 times a game but has blocks for hands. Like, it's part of his way of surviving. If the initial reads aren't open, or if there's a blitz coming, he knows his hot routes. He knows where his outlets are. And I would love to see some similar, at least type thought processes come from the 49ers offense. But it's going to be really interesting to see at the end of the day. Do you have any keys to victory for the 49ers versus the Bears?
I do. Kyle Shanahan, when things are working, stick with it. Please. I mean, outside of the scripts, right? Because when the drives are scripted, you know, that the 49ers looked like they weren't going to be stopped all game. And this happens, this game and the Seattle game were almost like mirror images. The only thing that was different was it wasn't raining. The 49ers allowed the Colts to hang around. The Colts shouldn't have even been in that game at all. The first drive, the 49ers looked like world beaters. Elijah Mitchell is running chunk gain after chunk gain. Jimmy Garoppolo's bootlegged out. He's hitting throws. Man, look at that. All right, so that script goes, but when that goes away, right now Kyle Shanahan is in a funk. And Kyle Shanahan needs to stick to what's working. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if that's, again, I'm not smarter than Kyle Shanahan. I'm not trying to implement that, but I'm just saying when something's working, go do it. Keep doing it until they stop it. And that's the thing. And you know what makes it more frustrating? Once you got right back to the bootlegs on Jimmy Garoppolo, what happened? 3 plays, boom, 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 touchdown. And that's the frustration that I feel from that is coming from fans, right? So again, like you said, it's less about what the Bears are doing. Just focus on yourselves. Implement whatever you need to and execute, and you should be fine in this game. No questions asked. Listen, obviously they're not the Tampa Bay Bucks, but the Tampa Bay Bucks worked the Chicago Bears, and that was bad. That game in no way was anywhere near close at all. Even when it was 0-0, it felt like it wasn't going to be close. But at the same time, the one thing that I really need them to do, and this is the one thing that the Bears have a little bit of advantage of, and I think a lot of people missed on, Khalil Herbert is very good at football. Very good at football. And he, even against this front 4 and that front 7 of the Bucks, he was ripping off runs. The kid has good vision. He has great jump cuts. He's very good. I see Brad smiling because I know that he probably was big on him during draft season, as Brad always usually is, man. He is very, very good. And that is the way that you keep pass rushers at bay. You keep them away as you continue to run the ball. Obviously, you have to get away from that if you're the Bears, because you went down 28-0 in like the first quarter or something like that. But at the same time, if the 49ers just do what they can do and execute, limit the penalties, limit the miscommunications, limit the mistakes, they should be able to win this game. Again, I feel like we're a broken record, and we've been saying it every week, but you got to hope that this is finally the week that it happens. I think what really makes what happened last week disappointing was the fact that all these things happened off of a bye. The play calling, the execution, all of that stuff off of a bye, right? You had a whole week. You had a whole week to get it together. You had a whole week to figure it out. I think that's what makes it a little bit more frustrating and throws a little bit more salt on the wound. This wasn't a team that came off of like a Monday night game, had to go right back and play on Sunday on a short week. You had a whole week off, and this is how you came out. But if the 49ers do what they can do, run the ball, stick to it, get back to play action, which the play action, a lot of people have confused. You don't need to run the ball effectively to have play action work. You just need to have the threat of the run. That's it, realistically. And that's it. And if you look at Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers off of play action, they are sparkling. Sparkling. This man is not a drop back passer. He's not. Same thing with Justin Fields. Justin Fields' numbers. Check his numbers on play action. Check his numbers on play action. It's much better than him being a straight drop back passer. And that is what the Bears are trying to make him do. Again, stick to what's working. Make sure you get your people in good positions and just execute. That's it. There's no keys. Just execute. I swear that's it, really. It's just execute at this point. This team, the Bears, they feel like a team that's in disarray themselves, but it's less about what's going on with them and more about what the 49ers can control, which is their own execution and their own discipline, and that all falls in line with the coach. Coach, get back to the play calling, get disrespectful again, and get this team rolling and get this win and get out of there.
My guy preaching over here. That's why I love having Jason on here to just spit facts, because you're hitting on so many points. I think one of the things that I have most frustrations with when I look at this team is this isn't a drop back passing team. Kyle has went out of his way to build a run first offensive line. And so that's part of it that bugs me a little bit, is because have the offensive line not been their best in spots? 100%. We can look at certain plays and we can look at them in a vacuum and be like, yeah, we can do better there. But at the same time, we understand this offensive line was built to run the football and run outside zone, run pitches, run these counters. I feel like Lakin and Brunskill have done a pretty solid job of being able to pull in and do those types of things with trap blocks and things like that. I think that's part of it. It's like, put our guys in positions to win with the bootlegs, showing run, the threat of run, because that helps our guys up front. It helps our receivers. It helps our quarterbacks. It helps everyone at the end of the day. So I think that's one of the things that I would also really like to see happen. Before this one gets out of here, Brittany says, 2 types of play callers, scab pickers and scripters. Scab pickers keep attacking a defense with the same working play. Scripters live and die with a script. Would you assume that Brittany is kind of calling Kyle a scripter right now? Is that the sense you're getting?
I mean, 6 games into the season, this is where he's at. I mean, that's a fair assessment right now. Doesn't mean that that's where he will be at the end of the season, but that's where he's at, play calling right now. So I think it's a good call. I mean, it really is. I mean, once he gets outside of that script, things are going wrong. And that's the thing. And, you can blame the quarterback all you want to, but at the same time, execution. Again, like there's that clip of Brandon Ayuk, flying by himself. All the ball has to do is get anywhere near him. Doesn't even need to be a perfect throw. It's still a walk-in touchdown. So that's it, realistically. Again, yes, a little bit of it. And Kyle acknowledged it after the game. And I like that. It falls on me. I've got to do a better job, and when he threw that challenge flag, man, he felt frazzled at that point. He felt desperate. Like that was what really scared me, was more like, oh my God, I need to make this happen right now, because I don't know if this defense can stop them, or I don't know if we, so that's really what made me a little bit afraid. But I think that's a bang on assessment at this point, especially when you look at the sample size. We're talking about 6 weeks of it right now.
Brittany's been on point. She keeps bringing the fire, and Tony has some questions as well. How good is the Bears' interior offensive line? He's worried without Kinlaw. They stuffed the middle with Herbert, and Herbert could go off. Take this one, Jason. You go for it first.
Yeah, I mean Vita Vea is one of the best in the business in terms of clogging up runs, right? And their front seven is no joke. It's talking about the #1 run defense probably in the league, the one that you don't want to face, literally locking up running backs week after week. They got away from the run game because they got down, but Herbert was ripping off run after run, and I was shocked, man. The kid has great vision, the jump cuts, all those things. He ran the ball effectively. So is it the interior offensive line? Maybe, but I'm really going to give Khalil Herbert a little bit more credit in terms of, man, he's elusive. He sees his gaps, and he hits them very fast. So it could be the interior offensive line, but he's really good at reading his keys and making sure that he hits the right holes. His vision is impeccable. I don't know how he fell as far as he did in the draft, honestly.
I actually don't think that the Bears' interior offensive line is that good. I like James Daniels, former guy out of Iowa. He's still coming into his own, but their center has struggled. I think Ted Nguyen, he covers the Raiders, posted a snap of the center basically just rolling the ball under his legs, not even getting the ball up. Like, I think they're having some troubles with that interior offensive line. So I'm actually not worried so much about that. It is more about Khalil Herbert. The reason why, when you first brought up Khalil Herbert, and I had a huge smile on my face, Khalil Herbert was one of the first my guys of last year. He was in my first mock draft. We then met up at the Senior Bowl. Remember, he had a phenomenal week at the Senior Bowl. So I sat next to Khalil Herbert in the airport. We flew on the same airplane. I feel a little connection to Khalil. That's one of my boys. So I am not surprised by how Khalil Herbert has been performing. I was surprised by where he was taken in the draft. I thought he was much better than a 6th-round draft pick out of Virginia Tech. But that's it. One of the reasons why Khalil Herbert has been phenomenal is because he knows how to read lanes and read cutback lanes and set up his blockers. The blockers might not even be that good, but he knows how to set up his offensive line to get in between him and the defender, something that 49ers running backs haven't been doing very well. They're getting better at it, especially Elijah Mitchell, but guys like Trey Sermon, they don't have that skill set right now that Khalil Herbert has. That's why Khalil Herbert is making so many good runs out of things that actually aren't that great. He's really good at seeing the cutback lanes and seeing the holes that open up when things are actually stuffed on the front end of the play. So I would say I agree. I'm more worried about Khalil Herbert than I actually am the offensive line. I would say if you had to put it one way or the other, the 49ers defensive line should have the upper hand against this offensive line group, even with the injuries that they have up front. I really don't. I'm not going to look at it as much of an excuse for that group if they can't get it going, even without Javon Kinlaw, because let's face it, Javon Kinlaw has not really been available for the majority of the year. So kind of feels like par for the course.
One more thing kind of bothers me real quick, a little bit. Azeez Al-Shaair in the concussion protocol. Azeez Al-Shaair was incredible, and his amazing season continues. And if he stopped the ball. He stopped Marlon Mack dead in his tracks, and he stopped Jonathan Taylor very quickly with his vision. If he's not there in this game, that is going to be a bit of a loss. I mean, look, Kentavious Street was getting blown off of the ball. Now, listen, that's Quentin Nelson. I'm not gonna kill you for that. That is Quentin Nelson that is doing that to you, right? But the run defense is struggling at this point. And if Azeez Al-Shaair is not in this game, you could be in for a long day of, hey, the Bears just want to simplify the game plan, much like they did in against the Raiders. 34 runs, 17 passes for Justin Fields, and they walk away with the W. You slow the game down. You keep the offense on the other side of the field, but that run game is really the key for the Bears to really give the 49ers a long day. And if Azeez isn't there, then I get a little bit more nervous.
Absolutely. I mean, Azeez Al-Shaair, you can maybe take a global step back and just look at the 49ers defense as a whole, strip the names from everyone, strip the jersey numbers. Azeez Al-Shaair might be the best performing defender up until this point. He's been all over the place. He's had a couple bumps and bruises here or there. But overall, the body of work that Azeez Al-Shaair has put in this year to step in for Dre Greenlaw, who looked like he was actually going to be taking a step forward as well, has been phenomenal. So I think you hit it perfectly there. If Azeez Al-Shaair, isn't available, against the Chicago Bears. That's actually a pretty substantial injury at this point because we know they're so thin at that depth piece right now in regards to the linebacker position. A bit of a squirrel here, Jason. Brittany wants us to remove our hats for 5 seconds. I'll show it off. Mine's harder. I got the whole like bun situation going, so it's not the prettiest, but you know, whatever, fine.
And I get haircuts. I get haircuts every week, but I'm waiting for Friday before I go to Chicago. So I mean, I've got a luscious bunch of hair up here. I do. That's definitely my MO. I only put the hat on because I haven't gotten a haircut, but you can catch me in Chicago not wearing any hats after I get a haircut for sure.
So there you have it, Brittany. You got us to take our hats off. Jason is always looking put together. So he's got the beard, he's got the hair. I got the beard going for me. I think that's where I keep it right about there. I know my strong suits, and we go from there. But how about this? As we start to, we're getting ready to turn to the question portion of our episode. Before we totally get there, is there anything else that we want to touch on before we turn our viewers loose to go crazy and ask us to do things like take off our hats or anything that they want at this point, because they all have the opportunity to kind of drive the show here? Anything that you want to kind of put a bow on, anything that's been rattling around in your brain that you just kind of wanted to get out there and talk about?
Win the game, change the course of the season, and win in the fashion that you know you can when you should. I mean, again, just execute. And again, if you put out another week of the way you've been playing since that fourth quarter in Detroit, of not executing, of doing things wrong, you are not going to be able to shake the stigma of being a bad football team. That's it. It doesn't matter how much talent you have if you're not executing. It does not matter. Talented teams have not executed and worked well. That's it. And that's it. You cannot sit up here and still look people in the face and say you're a good football team or you are trending in the right direction if you continue to week after week after week shoot yourself in the foot and carry those traits of bad football teams. Again, if I showed you all those stats and didn't tell you what team it was, you say, man, the Jaguars stink. Man, the Jets are awful. 1 for 11, 7 for 122 on 4 turnovers. That's Jet-like. It is. I'm sorry, guys. And I know you don't want to hear that. I know we're not the Jets, but you have a chance to change all that. And you better start now because you're going to have too long of a sample size to shake that stigma. That's it.
I think you said it perfectly well, because there are so many talented teams. And when talented teams don't do the small things right and they don't execute, they don't look like good teams. But on the opposite side of that, you can have a group of guys that maybe aren't that talented, but if everyone's doing their own individual role exactly how it's intended to be within the realm of what they're capable of, that team could look much better than actually what they are. Just because you have, when the power of having 11 people doing the exact same thing in rhythm, in timing, it's beautiful. So sometimes a lesser talented team can take over a more talented team for that simple fact alone. So the 49ers have talent. That isn't the problem. Even with injuries, we've talked about it before. Trent Williams goes down. That really sucks to lose Trent Williams. But guess what? Jalen Moore steps in, does a phenomenal job. You have guys like Drake Greenlaw go down. That really sucks. But then you have guys like Azeez Al-Shaair step in and ball out. So we've seen opportunities where there's depth on this team that if everyone who's just stepping in and executes, that's it. At the end of the day, I'm close to deeming this season the one block away season. Go ahead. Go.
A little bit of breaking news. I know this has nothing to do with the 49ers. Mark Ingram was just traded back to the New Orleans Saints.
Interesting. Interesting. I guess they let Latavius Murray go in the offseason for his money, and they decide to send some assets to get Mark Ingram back to back up Alvin Kamara. Do you think there's an injury involved with Alvin Kamara to trigger that move?
I think that you want to, the way that they use Kamara, and I guess we're going to be talking about fantasy football, is that they want to use him sparingly and get him those valuable touches while having someone who can take those hits down the middle. Because if you continue to use Kamara this way, it's not going to be sustainable. You saw it on Seattle. He was literally the entire offense, everything that was going on Monday night. So I think that's where we're at with that. I know that has nothing to do with the 49ers, but that is something that came across my phone while we were talking.
I think it's pertinent. Everyone here likes football enough. If you're watching this YouTube channel, you're invested in the football, and we appreciate you guys for sticking in. We're an hour in. Let's transition to the question portion. Drop your questions in the chat. We'll kind of allow you guys to get this thing going. Maybe we'll pull out Spicy Aponte with one of the questions. We'll see. Jason's been on his best behavior. He's been phenomenal today. Here's one of the first questions we got. Where's the accountability with this team? How would you answer that question, Jason? No context, just as you read it.
And, there's two ways to look at it. You're absolutely right? Because it doesn't seem like anybody's standing up there. Everybody's kind of saying the same things over and over, right? But at the same time, words and actions are two different things, right? And so that's the thing. It's like you can go up there and say everything about we need to be better, we need to do this. Yeah, duh. Where are you going to do it from? And how are you going to do it, right? So it's like, don't tell me, show me, right? And I think that this is a good question because it looks like people are just giving generic answers, coach speak answers. Well, we worked hard during the week. This is something that, the guys in our building really believe in and they move. Yeah, but it's not translating to the field. So what's going to change? And it's not going to change with just words. So I don't know I don't really have the answer. I don't even know if I really answered the question. Where's the accountability? I just think I agree with you in the fact that I am questioning the same thing and I'm asking that same exact question.
Well, typically when it comes to accountability, it's always going to the leaders, whether it's the players in the locker room, the leaders in the front office. That's where accountability ultimately falls. It's the same in the business world. It's the same in any aspect of life. If you're a manager, your subordinates could do something dumb, you're still going to have to take accountability for it. Whether they execute what you've told them to do or they have not, you still have a level of accountability regardless. So if we're going to talk about who's accountable, it's always going to be Kyle Shanahan. At the end of the day, that's why when we got through Detroit and we got through the Eagles and everyone was like, what's going on? That's probably why you and I are probably pretty close on the same page of saying, well, it's on Kyle. We can look at the players and how they're functioning on the field, but at the end of the day, the accountability goes to the head coach, who is the OC, who picks the players. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. Of course, the players are going to have to be accountable for their specific play. But when we're talking globally, it always lands on the leaders, like you heard from Fred Warner today, and it lands on the head coach. And that's where it is. That's who you hold accountable, because at one token, Kyle Shanahan isn't out there running routes. He isn't out there throwing the ball. He isn't actually out there blocking it up. So he can only be held so accountable. I think right now, at least focusing on the team, who needs to be held accountable is the offensive leaders and the offense. For me, and that's what it comes down to. All right, let's see what other questions that we got here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get to the bottom here. Here's one. All right. So Chewy and Alejandra ask, do y'all think they have a shot left and why? Jason, I'll start with you.
Depends on what you mean by shot. If you mean Super Bowl, I don't think there's a shot at that. Or if there is, it's the minuscule shots, like the stuff that they make Disney movies about type of shot, right? Like something that is like completely unbelievable. But in terms of the playoffs, we highlighted it earlier. One game out right now with a team that you're playing that's right in front of you that you can jump right over right now. It has to start right now. So I would say that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by Football Outsiders, their percentage chance to sneak into the playoffs is around 28, 30%, something like that. Okay. And that's knocked down 11% from the loss on Sunday. So yeah, there's a shot. Is the shot likely? Probably not, but there's always a shot, and there's always a chance to turn it around, and you have to start now. And again, the reason that you started now is because the circumstances around other teams can change drastically and very fast, right? We saw the fact that Russell Wilson went down. Now look, Seattle can't win a game. Other things like that can happen. You don't pray for injuries with other teams, but this is the league. This is how it is. Circumstances change very fast. It's a week-to-week league, very much so. And they've alluded to that, where 1 week you're down, then all of a sudden things start to change, but it has to change right now. If you have any shot of making the playoffs, you have to win this game right now. And if that's the goal, then fine, go for it. But if you lose this game, then I think you have to start looking yourself in the mirror and saying, there's really no shot. Let's play the kid, and that's it, and let's see what happens. Even then, you might have a chance to sneak in, but it becomes so far from likely at that point that it doesn't make sense for you to just continue to trot out Jimmy Garoppolo and pretend like you're in this. I know Coach said, I'm not going to play guys just for the sake of experience. At the same time, be realistic. Be realistic. And those vets in that building who, are there to win, like Alex Mack isn't there to rebuild. Trent Williams didn't sign back to help rebuild or anything like that. At the same time, they've got to look at themselves and say, yeah, we're pretty much out of it at this point. This is the league, and this is where we're going. But with that extra wild card spot, anything's possible. But it has to start this week, and you have to win this game. And then after that, go to the next week. You have to be 1-0 going into every week. Out of every week, and that's it. That's it. I know that it sounds stupid, and that's coach speak, but that's the only way to really look at it at this point.
I don't think it sounds stupid at all. I think it's absolutely 100% correct. And I would imagine that actually sounds probably a lot like what they're saying inside that locker room, because honestly, at the end of the day, we can look at the entirety of the schedule. We can start trying to crunch the math and figure out what do we have, how many games we have. Those guys don't think that far ahead. In reality, football players, when you're in a locker room, you really are only thinking week to week. You might have games circled that you're looking forward to, but you are seriously focused only week to week. And right now, this is the week of all weeks. The question is, do they have a shot? They won't have a shot if they lose against the Bears, in my opinion. Because if you lose against the Bears, what is that? It's 5 losses in a row. Fan base is the players and coaches, they care about the fan base to only a certain extent. But if we're talking about probably the perspective and perception inside that locker room, if they lose against the Chicago Bears, everyone knows their job isn't safe. Everyone knows that this season that had Super Bowl aspirations, playoff aspirations, is quickly, holy crap, are we going to have to move at the end of this year because everyone's getting fired? Are we going to have to not, and I don't think that's the case, but that's what the thoughts will start to creep in. And so it feels hopeless in a sense, but I am a bit more optimistic. I really feel like if the 49ers can get a win against the Chicago Bears to give a little bit of positive juice to this locker room, to the coaching staff, especially if they execute their brand of football. If the 49ers come out and win their way, I think that is a really, really good sign for this team, because then you can take that and you can slingshot that momentum into a home game against, I still hope, the undefeated Cardinals. And if you can then parlay that into 2 wins in a row and you take down potentially an undefeated team, and let's say Trey Lance starts that game, if we want to get real crazy with it, the entire hope and doom and gloom and everything flips on its head, especially if Trey Lance is a starter and plays well against the Cardinals, because then all of a sudden, we just ripped off 2 games in a row. You look at the overall schedule, okay, we're now at 500, and we've now split with the Cardinals, and we got Monday Night Football at the Rams coming up. That's how quickly the season can change, but it has to start against the Bears. And if they don't win against the Bears, we're going to be a lot more doom and gloom. But I really think there's an opportunity for this year to get back on track. But that takes a lot of effort from a lot of people inside that building. And they're going to have to go and do it against the Chicago Bears. And then it's 1 game at a time. And if they can get at least 2 wins out of the next three games, 2 of them are divisional. I would prefer 3 wins in a row. But even if they were to go 2-1, that still has them in a wild card position. So no one wants to talk about playoffs right now. but a win against the Chicago Bears, and who knows what happens against the Cardinals. We'll see what happens. And I almost missed Luke's comment here for the second day in a row. Shame on me, Luke. I'm so sorry. But Luke says secondary better button up, and if they do, we win. Is it that simple?
Pretty much. I mean, at this point, pretty much. I mean, realistically, when you were looking at it, obviously the run defense is something that you want to see get better. But, you know, we've already highlighted the impact of no Javon Kinlaw. But again, the Colts didn't throw the ball on the 49ers, and it wasn't like, oh my God, they're getting picked apart. They were just undisciplined, and they were committing penalties. So yeah, just button it up, man. Like, stop limiting those things. Turn around. Those balls were underthrown, thrown into places where they could have intercepted passes. Button it up. That's it. And look, I know that this hurts to say, but Justin Fields is not looking great right now. And you have to take advantage of those mistakes when he's making them at this point. And at where he's at right now, you have to make sure you capitalize on those things, because right now, that Bears team, when things start to snowball, they snowball quickly. And we saw it happen last week. Obviously, it's the defending Super Bowl champions. But right now, the game is moving too fast for our Prince, and he needs to slow it down a little bit. And right now, he's not being put in good spots to win. But he has to own a little bit of right now, he's just not playing well. They don't have a lot of chemistry with Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson, who is somebody who just is too good to not get the ball. But for whatever reason, it's just not working. So, yes, the secondary should be able to button it up and just play discipline. Play your game. You should be fine in this one. It's just the run defense that worries me a little bit more. But if the secondary can limit those penalties and they stop, you know, with those costly penalties, especially on third down, that's the part I think about the penalties that really, really hurt. It would be on third down. And it's just like, man, you had a chance to get off the field if you just turn your head around and that's it. But it is what it is. They need to button it up. I agree with this comment right here.
Yeah, Luke's pretty on point. He's definitely a faithful member of the Sourdough Squad. We see you, Luke. I think to kind of extrapolate a little bit onto that is, at least from a fan base perspective, could you imagine if Justin Fields did come out, our Prince, and have a good day against the 49ers and win and have a better day than Jimmy Garoppolo? So we just got done talking about the optimistic side of things and about how, like, yeah, if Jimmy Garoppolo comes out, the offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends, everyone, running backs is doing their job. Kyle Shanahan, putting them in position to be successful, and they get a W. Everything, the tide starts to turn. But if we get more of the Colts game, we get more of the Seattle game, and Justin Fields comes out and performs better than Jimmy, hell, what if Trey Lance is inserted and Fields has a day? Just imagine the fan base. So there's a lot of reasons why the 49ers need to come out and win this game, because if they lose against the Chicago Bears, there's another layer added onto this conversation. Did you draft the right guy? That's the next conversation that's coming. And that's what they need to help push back. That's why they come out into the media. They go on these radio shows. They make these comments. It's because they're trying to keep public perception at bay a little bit. A win will do that. A loss to Justin Fields, ooh, you thought it was bad now. Hold on, folks. So hopefully that's not what we're talking about next week, next Wednesday when we have you on. But the hope is they get it right against the Chicago Bears, because they just have to. Anthony Adams says, Ayuk's problem is Jim being Jimmy Garoppolo. His big plays were with Nick and CJ. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. I mean, look, I don't want to pile on, right? I really don't. And obviously, this is a moot point. It's a play that I reposted from Baldy, right? And a lot of people are like, we're a wet ball, and Twilly needs to hold this block. Maneuver the pocket. Know where the blitz is coming from, slide earlier, understand your coverage, throw with anticipation. Come on, man. You are in your 8th year. And I get it. The play was negated because Dwelly was called for holding. But goodness gracious, that's why when I put that play out there and I said it's on the quarterback, it is on the quarterback. I understand. It's a bootleg designed to go to one side of the field, get the ball the other way. But when you feel the pressure, why is there no pocket presence? Why do you not understand that you have a tight end who is blocking an edge rusher? Why don't you understand your depth of your drop? I see quarterbacks do this all the time. When things are not perfect, slide up a little bit and just flick that thing out there because he was that open. The safety's hips were turned the other way. Ayuk spun him around like a top. It's literally a walk-in touchdown. It is absolutely, a lot of it has to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, man. And that play, for all the people, wet ball, he has to hold the block. You are the quarterback. Manipulate the pocket. Have some sort of feel in the pocket. Why are we still asking these questions in your 4th year in the system? Goodness gracious, it's frustrating.
As a former offensive lineman who relies on my quarterback, my running backs, and my wide receivers to do the right thing to make me look good with timing, that has been a big point of emphasis for me in regards to Jimmy Garoppolo and his pocket awareness and presence. It's just, you should be able to identify things pre-snap that help alert you and keep you on high alert. And like, okay, if they're overloading the right side, that means that I should have the left side to be able to step into if they come rushing really hard, and be able to sense and feel pressure. The Dwelley play where he had all the room and could have leveraged and helped Dwelley. I talk about setting up blocks all the time on this channel because, trust me, I've had running backs who help me a lot by setting me up for blocks, and running backs where I'm blocking and doing my job and he runs straight into the guy I'm blocking because he doesn't understand the leverage. That's what I'm seeing with this offensive line. Now, there are mistakes, but that perfect play, a couple hitches, step up, 2 steps to the left, you put Dwelley back in position to make the block. You have all the time in the world. And that's I don't know. To me, should be mandatory as a quarterback. You should have to be aware of the pocket that is developing around you and being able to maneuver through it. I would say that's one of the things that I've seen Jimmy struggle with the most. So with the whole Brandon Ayuk thing, now I talked to someone, Jason, that has tapped into the team. And because I was tweeting some stuff yesterday because I'm grumpy, man. I'm frustrated. And he said, well, it might not be on just Kyle or just Jimmy. Ayuk might have a little piece of that pie. So we'll see. At this point, like I said, when I said that tweet, I don't care who's wrong. I don't care. This team, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Shanahan, they got to have a come to Jesus moment and just figure it out because they're professionals. This is their job. This is their job at the end of the day. So we'll see what happens. But Travis says every week teams just throw up the ball and watch us panic. That's Fields' best trait. Only Bosa can stop him. This sounds like he's kind of talking about, some of the issues that we've had with the secondary. Do you have anything to expand onto that?
No, I mean, that's really where it's at right now because, again, I watched every single snap that Justin Fields has taken because when you take as hard a stance as I did in this offseason, I want to make sure that I'm as well informed as I can be going forward, right? I've been getting a lot of questions on Twitter. Do you still feel this way? I feel Lance is better. I just am saying this. It is to be determined. There is no way that you can get me to make a statement one way or another with Trey Lance playing 1 game and a few plays and Justin Fields playing 4 games and behind this team and everything as well too. Listen, there have been quarterbacks who have started off and been great in the season and have ended up not being what they thought they would be. Peyton Manning was brutal his first year. Brutal. And look what he turned into. I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you examples of why it is too early to determine on either side what's the right pick. And the Lance people who tell me that he's better, you could very well be right. And listen, I want to eat all the crow in the world. I promise you, this is something that I will be happy to be wrong about. But with when I say that I've watched every single snap of Justin Fields, there's no chemistry right now with any of their receivers. There's been drops that have happened with him that nobody wants to talk about.
Did you hear Allen Robinson come out today and talk about the lack of chemistry? I thought that was interesting because they didn't get a lot of reps during camp.
Who knew? Maybe having reps together helps build chemistry. Amazing thought process.
Jason and I were all over YouTube being like, why isn't Trey Lance getting first team reps? Why isn't Trey Lance getting first team reps? It's because of that. It builds continuity. When Trey Lance got in against Arizona, guess what? His offensive line didn't know how to handle him because they never played together. Sorry. I just had to let that out.
No, you're good. If Spicy Brad wants to come out, I will take a back seat and allow him to come out. I promise you I will. But realistically, look, the chemistry right there is not there. And Justin Fields today came out and said, I am leading Zoom meetings outside of everything else where we can talk about things and we can and that's something, that's a sign of a guy who is going to work and get better. Now, whether that happens or not, that's a whole other thing, right? Look, some other little things in this Tampa game that I think has come out that I don't think people are largely aware of, but I will go through it. Justin Fields walked onto the field and realized that his third string right tackle was going to be starting in this game, and he had no idea until he got on the field. Okay. Matt Nagy is yelling in his ear. There's 12 men on the field. There's 12 men on the field. Hike it and throw it. Free play. Guess what? Turned into an interception. Guess what? Matt Nagy doesn't know how to count. There's 11 people on the field. So these are the things that Justin Fields is dealing with right now. And this is not me making it up. You can search all of these tweets from the beat writers because these are quotes. This is how bad the situation is with Justin Fields right now. So yes, this is exactly the opportune time for the secondary to get right based on what's going on in the coaching, where Justin Fields is at in his development, where his chemistry is at with his wide receivers. And I'm telling you that it hurts me to tell you all these things because when I say that he's my prince, I mean that wholeheartedly. But again, at the same time, this is just where he's at. I have to keep it a buck. For as much as I liked him, right now, he doesn't look so good. He's not looking hot. That doesn't mean that that's what he will be for the rest of the way. And I'm not sure how anybody could be confident and say for a fact, oh, okay, this is exactly what he's going to be, because that's just, there's not enough sample size. You have to collect all the info and continue to gather that data. And there's no way right now that you could be confident to say one way or the other. That's it.
I think we'll know what Justin Fields is when the next regime comes in, is basically what it comes down to, because some of the things that you've said, I don't think Nagy, I had high hopes for Nagy when he came over from the Chiefs. Maybe thought it was Trubisky at first. I don't think it's Trubisky. I think it's just, again, so you have some good offensive coordinators, play designers, play callers, but being a head coach of a team is completely different than that. You have to be able to motivate. You have to be able to bring everyone together. You can't just call the shots, and you have to be able to operate things properly. And it sounds like with the Chicago Bears, they haven't been operating the way they should have or should have, for best that we can say, at least. Brittany strikes again. She says 49ers had rumored interest in, I would say, Marlon Mack is who she's referring to. Should we have been interested in Ingram? What are our biggest trade assets heading into the trade deadline? I think this is actually a good topic, and I'll let you start with it.
Well, here's a crazy idea, and just let me know. Maybe you play the guy you traded up for in the third round? What a novel idea. Okay, Elijah Mitchell is so good right now at what he's doing. He's running physically, but inside zone, outside zone, you can run that with Trey Sermon. I'm lost right now as to why he's not playing. So why would you trade for a guy off of an Achilles injury when you drafted a guy in the third round? And I know that people have said to me, well, the draft's a crapshoot. You play the best players. Play them then. Like, see what they have. Like, and this is why I don't understand the interest in a running back, because I'll tell you this. Marlon Mack coming in is not going to solve this team's problems. Mark Ingram wouldn't either at this point. And what are the biggest trade assets heading into the trade deadline? This one is going to get me destroyed, but I don't care. Ready? Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw. It's time, buddy. You are in a position where you're going to have to pay him. Okay? Undersized, regressed a bunch in the run game. Azeez Al-Shaair's ascension right now has made that a little bit possible. And you have to kind of bank off of the reputation that he has. I point to the one game that he played this year. I point to a few games from last year. I understand he doesn't miss tackles, but if you're in the wrong position to attempt the tackle, doesn't matter. He takes bad angles. He's in the wrong gaps. Fred Warner, who doesn't show anybody up in week one, turned around after a big Jamal Williams run and said, what are you doing? You literally ran into the back of me. If you play your gap, right? And everybody's going to say, hey, he had a pick 6. Yeah, he stood there and the ball fell to him and he ran it back. But you have to capitalize right now. You have a decision to make. You're going to pay Dre Greenlaw again? You're going to extend him? Azeez Al-Shaair has been playing much better football this year than he had at any period right now, even in 2019. I understand, guys. I understand. Seattle Hawk Killer, all that stuff. I get it. The past is the past. Look at the body of work going forward from there. He's been regressing. He has. And Rich Madrid was the first person who pointed it out to me, and you guys killed him on the internet for it. Until you actually watch where he's run fitting. Until you actually watch where he's not getting to where he's taking poor angles. The DK Metcalf touchdown last year in Seattle. Dre Greenlaw took an awful route, an awful angle to it. And DK Metcalf was able to get to the sideline and score a touchdown. Azeez Al-Shaair right now is making Dre Greenlaw expendable. I understand, okay, don't trade the depth. I got it, maybe. Okay, I can understand that argument. But you can get a nice little haul for Dre Greenlaw. Definitely recoup a second or a third for him easily. And I know that people don't want to hear that. You're going to come from my head. That's fine. I'm not even looking at the comments. I turned those off. I'm done with that. Like, I've got it on private chat. I'm not looking. I don't know what anybody's saying right now. But at the same time, if you're talking about getting something back for somebody right now, I think that right now, if you're talking about at the deadline, teams will be ready to pay up for Dre Greenlaw, especially if they have linebacker issues. All right, so go for it. Kill me now.
Since you're not looking at the chat, I'll actually help pull it up for you they're not disagreeing with you. Actually, you'd be surprised. Look, I like the trade. Interesting. Look at what Jason is doing. They're with you, Jason. They're with you. And I actually think I wasn't expecting it. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's part of what you have to look at when you are a seller is whose contract is going to affect what you're going to try to do next year or the year after. And right now, that's a player that's going to be in that situation. Eric Armstead, we know his cap hit jumps up massively. Does he become someone that could be a tradable piece to a team that needs a flexible guy that can play edge, can play interior? He'd be a guy that's available. Anyone who's on a one-year deal right now, I'd say don't feel safe. If you're on a one-year deal, and especially if they lose against the Chicago Bears, don't feel safe, because I would imagine that's when they start transitioning towards what's next. Is there someone behind you that can play at a similar level than you and gives us the upside and is cheap and we can recoup a pick? So who that is, I think Dre Greenlaw was a good one. Trying to think off the top of my head who's someone that you could trade. I don't want to say – screw it, I'll say it. I'm scared for Brandon Ayuk. I'm scared, Jason. I'm scared because I'm just scared. I'm scared that they're not jiving. The continued communication, the fact that it isn't too far down the rabbit hole where someone could say, well, he's still talented. You see the routes. He's getting open. That someone would do that. I wouldn't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm just scared.
Two teams jump to mind that would be instantly in on him. And I made a joke on Twitter, 29 other teams that would be involved. And someone asked me, well, who are the two that wouldn't? And I was like, well, Dallas and Tampa. They have no need for Brandon Ayuk right now. The New Orleans Saints, who are missing Michael Thomas, and you can see in that wide receiver room, Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, they're not getting the job done. For everything that Jameis Winston is doing, I only believe he has 2 interceptions. He has 13 touchdowns, which is incredible. But at the same time, everything's flowing through Kamara, a second team. And I don't think that they would deal with them because of the tension that happened this offseason. The Green Bay Packers. Now, yes, exactly. Devontae Adams is not going to play this week, but imagine lining up Devontae Adams with Brandon Ayuk on the other side and Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. That is a nightmare. And there is something else on that offense that they need if they want to push themselves over the top. I don't think that they would deal with the Packers just based off of the contention that has been reported between Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan and those organizations. But those are two very easy, obvious fits for teams that are going to be trying to contend and move up. You can see that the Saints are already wheeling and dealing. They're bringing back Mark Ingram because they're trying to beef up their running back room. and they don't know when Michael Thomas is coming back. His practice window could have been open. They said he's not even close, and they still are winning games at this point. So those are two obvious fits right there. If it's the Saints, then they've got a good one. Jameis Winston will throw that ball to him. If he's open, he will hit him. He's not going to miss him. He will throw the ball to him. Jameis Winston is taking steps this year under the tutelage of Sean Payton. But I fear that Green Bay would come in and say, listen, we'll give you a second, because they already had their eyes on Ayuk the entire time. Give you a second. And who are the 49ers at this point to turn that down, especially since next first round pick is Trey Lance, to say no, especially if the team is not trending in the right direction. And I don't want this to happen at all. I fear it too. I want Brandon Ayuk to be here because I really believe he can still be that guy for us. But man, if he went to the Packers, think about how hard it would be to defend him and Devontae Adams, and that offense would be largely unstoppable. Largely.
Yeah, just you said Green Bay, and I'm like, man, I really hope that does not happen, because you could see how, and we know Kyle's scheme, there's a couple spots running that scheme where Ayuk could theoretically just be plugged right in and might have a change of verbiage here or there, but overall concept and scheme understanding is already there. So it wouldn't be hard to find maybe this particular spot. The problem is what do you get from him? He was a first-round draft pick. Would they take anything less? I doubt it. So hopefully based on that alone is why it won't happen. But I am scared. I don't like, again, we've sensed the energy from when this all started happening. It's compounding. I just don't want it to compound any further. That's all. So hopefully that's not the case. But we are trending towards the 49ers being sellers at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see. We saw Quan Alexander get traded last year. It's going to be interesting to see who could get moved. And we know this front office, they will make moves. So we'll see who that is. Luke Luna, who actually has been one of Jimmy, always brings a really good thought process when talking about the quarterback position. And he leans Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's perfectly fine. And I know he's been swaying a little bit. He says Jimmy Garoppolo got no killer instinct. Trey Lance era will be refreshing. I hear you, Luke. I like to hear that. Do you kind of feel that the Trey Lance era, if and when it starts, will be a breath of fresh air, or do you feel like the fan base that seems to be negative a lot of the time will just we'll just take that energy and they'll just throw it at Trey? Or do you think might back everyone off a little bit?
No, I think that this is absolutely a good point. And, you know, if you say that he's been a Jimmy Garoppolo guy, I would say that judging from what I've seen on the timeline, and even the staunchest Jimmy Garoppolo supporters have kind of just said, listen, it's time, you know, at this point, like, you know, your ceiling is already capped at this point. You already kind of have seen it, and that's it, you know, like, so it's not wrong to think that. And it really isn't. And sometimes that jolt comes from a rookie, right? You know, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. So it's not a bad thought process. Brad, you still there? All right, there we go. Yeah, all right. Yeah, you kind of froze up real quick. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thought process at all. And like I said, some of the biggest Jimmy guys on Twitter, like there's a few that are going to go down with the ship, right? And you know what? I applaud them, and I'm good with that, right? Because that's kind of how I feel with the Fields thing, right? Like I'm going to be the guy who's going to take all the hits and everything, and that's fine, right? Because I would rather be wrong and stand with my, you know, and learn from my assessment and all that stuff and be wrong than the flip-flop, right? It would be wrong of me to say, oh my God, they got Lance. Well, that was the right pick. Nah, I hope it's the right pick for sure. But at that time, that's not how I felt. So I'm not going to change up. But a lot of people are swaying and changing their way on this as well, too. It's just this offense feels capped, and it just feels like, you know, you've seen the ceiling. I think 2019 was the ceiling with Jimmy Garoppolo under center, and I think that people want to see something a little bit different, especially considering this is the future and this is the guy who's going to be your guy for years and years. Why not kick off that development right now?
100% makes a lot of sense. Brittany got another one. I apologize too if I've missed your super chats. I'm trying to get them wrangled in. Typically we'll go to some non-super chat questions, right? But super chats are kind of dominating right now. So Brittany wants us to role play. I'm not an actor, so it is what it is. She wants me to play Lynch. She wants you to play Kyle.
I get to be Kyle.
And what would it take to get back in a trade for Kittle, Greenlaw, Ward? Or wait, Kittle, Greenlaw, Ward, Kinlaw, Armstead, and Jimmy G. What would it take to get back in a trade for Kittle? I'm not positive I'm understanding the scenario. Is it we're role playing that I want to trade those players and we're having a back and forth? Is that what it sounds like to you?
Yeah, I think that it's a great thing, and I think that a lot of the guys here on this list, they're foundational players, and once we get that cleaned up, no, I'm sorry, I thought I had to act like Kyle. I'm sorry.
No, I love that you just hopped right into it. I'm still trying to process it. My guy Jason goes straight into it. I freaking love it, man. Like I said, I'm not an actor, so I'm not going to be. You are the actor. You know how to rep. You could probably play Kyle and Lynch in the same scene. You don't even need me, but Jason came with the straight fire. I'm over here trying to figure out how to set it up. He just came in with the straight Kyle Shanahan vibes. But Kyle, I'm John Lynch. Kyle, you know what? Based on how we've been looking at this year, it's really not been trending in the right direction. All my friends in the media, they're coming down my road asking me what we're doing and why we're doing it. Is it time to make a move? We have George Kittle, who's getting a lot of money. We have Dre Greenlaw, who wants to get paid. Ward, he's making a decent amount of money from his position. We have Kinlaw, Armstead, Jimmy G. Kyle, what do we do here?
Well, I mean, honestly, if we're talking about, I think that the question is more just the compensation for each of them, and I think that that's kind of, I mean, unless Brittany can correct us, I believe that she's just asking about the compensation at this point, right? With Kittle, he's highly regarded across the league. He really is, man. In all circles, he's highly regarded. So, in that way, run out of breath while talking. That's a good one, actually. That's really good. It's always those sharp inhales. Yeah, so we're just, we're working on a lot of things, and I think that he's been progressing really good during the week, and I mean, it's really just been, a week to week thing. We want to see those progressions, but we feel good about those guys that we have in that locker room over there, So yeah, all right. But in terms of compensation, right, with Jimmy right now, realistically, what you could probably get for him is probably a 5th or a 6th rounder. I mean, he's a 28-year-old guy who seems to be a little, yes, compensation, perfect. He's probably he's a 28-year-old guy who has probably hit his ceiling at this point, right? And and the injuries, right? It's more about the injuries than anything, because I still believe that Jimmy Garoppolo can be a starter somewhere, a stopgap in between a younger guy, for sure. Like, he can have this Andy Dalton-like trajectory of just, moving on to a place where, hey, you have a younger guy, but you want a guy who's been experienced in the league and can at least execute your offense with some level of competency. I still think that the highest you could probably get, and this is like wishing for the stars, is probably a 4th rounder at this point. Realistically, what you're going to be looking at is probably a 5th rounder in that Teddy Bridgewater compensation lane, right? Like in that area, right? That same sort of area. With Kittle, he's a little bit more highly regarded. You could probably, pry yourself a 2nd or a 3rd round for him. But at this point, that won't go over well with this fan base, even if, unfortunately, he's been injured. And, listen, again, you don't coach or you don't make decisions based on the fan base or anything like that. Armstead's a little bit more tricky because you mentioned that cap hit. And I think that that's the portion where it would be less, because you have to take on that contract and that cap hit. And depending on your salary, your salary cap situation is going to be harder to fit him in. We're not talking about the player. We are talking about where his deal is, right, at this point. Jimmy Ward is somebody that's a little bit more interesting. I do not want to see Jimmy Ward go. No, please don't. I would crack under the pressure immediately. Like, I would come out in the first, like, as soon as Grant asked me a tough question, I'll be like, damn it, Grant, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Let me live. Anyway, but with Jimmy Ward, it's a little bit harder, because he is so vital to what they want to do in terms of the versatility. He can slide in and guard corners. They can run something where they have Hufanga tart him on the field and not lose anything as far as run fits and things like that. He can guard guys on the outside, but he would be somebody that a contending team should be trying to pry away from the 49ers and utilize. But I just think that he's valued in that building. So I don't know what goes on with him in that discussion. With Kinlaw, now I don't know what you could get for Kinlaw at this point right now, especially if there's going to be a season-ending injury. That gets way trickier at this point. Unless they have an amazing plan to manage that knee and they think they can get him through it, I don't know what you could possibly get for him right now at this point. And then remind, when you trade, you still have to figure out what you're going to do in the fifth-year option. So it's not as cut and dry as what you think you can get. With Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't really think that you can get much. I think that you can get a little bit more for George Kittle. I don't know how well that will go over and how that is, because I feel like a little bit of the run struggles at times, no matter what you want to say about injuries, is still attributed to the fact that George Kittle is not there blocking, right? Like, he's not there blocking at times. And that is such a big part of what they want to do. I understand he's not on the field, so I get that portion. Then when you lump in these contracts with Armstead and those, I don't even know if I gave an answer or if I even have a really good answer for any of those. But the only ones that I can nail down compensation for, probably Jimmy Garoppolo and probably George Kittle. All those other guys, it depends on the team, their salary cap situation, and all of those things to make it fit. Jimmy Ward would be the one that, if you were looking to move to somebody if you were looking to get somebody to immediately contribute, and you don't really have to worry about injuries, for a guy who started his career with a bunch of injuries, he's been on the field all the time, and can make an immediate impact on your defense. That one is the one that's probably the most valuable, but I don't want to get rid of Jimmy Ward in any way. I really don't.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through on that. I think you did a pretty damn good job. You did a better job than I did, even just trying to comprehend what was being said. But in regards to all those pieces being named in a potential trade, I think we take a step back. If the 49ers were to trade any one of those pieces, I think it's an admission within that locker room that this year is a wash year. And so that just has to be what the clear understanding at the top is. Because, again, what they're dealing with is, before the season started, they were talking about Super Bowl. Super Bowl is the goal, and with a very core group of people. And a lot of those core groups of people were in that list that Brittany mentioned. So I get it. If you are going, listen, guys, this year hasn't been what it is. We need to start recouping and building for next year, because the future is Trey Lance, and we need to build around Trey Lance. Then if you're selling those pieces, then that makes more sense. But if they're trying to just like sell and just get little compensation to still keep trying to attack this year, it's not going to work, because everything will implode on itself. I feel like a lot of this year is imploding because of the situation of them trying to move Jimmy, which was a team leader. And so I think as a result, if you continue to do that, it's just an admission that this year is a wash, and I'm not sure they're ready to do that.
One more thing too, and I found this super interesting after the game, was when Joe Staley talked about the call that he made to Buckner and how he was ready to push and pass the torch to him. And I think that, look, aside from the player, I think that, like you said, the message to that locker room, when you get rid of somebody who is of high character and highly regarded, like Joe Staley was like, I was passing the torch to the guy that I thought was going to be here as long as I was. And he told me that he was getting traded, which was an absolute shock. I think you're dead on and you're bang on with that one, because if you start to move guys like, Kittle, all those guys, nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. None of you are foundational pieces at this point. None of you. And I think that's a little bit that what goes into it too. It's a tough business, but at the same time, you can lose the buy-in, the locker room with moves like that. And you have to make sure that team is completely on the same page, because it felt like that Buckner move not only floored the fan base, but that locker room. And that was right after a Super Bowl season. So that's the thing, man. It's a tricky situation. It's not as easy as, it's not like baseball. Like in baseball, trade deadline, when you're not, whatever, you're a seller. That's it. Boom. It's done. You know that the season's over mathematically. You make moves. In football, that camaraderie is a little bit more intense. And I feel like that plays a lot more into decisions and how people react from them. Because now people start to think, oh my goodness, if you're getting rid of him, none of us are safe at this point. But I think in baseball, it's a little bit more of a business thing. Like, that's way more like that.
Yeah. So we'll see how it progresses. Obviously, like, I think what Jason and I have hit on is that there's still a glimpse of hope that they can get a win against Chicago and turn the tide. So hopefully that's the case, but if they don't, they'll have a couple days and we'll see what happens. If they don't win against the Chicago Bears and you start seeing any one of these foundational players moved, you know exactly what that means. And it means that they've given up on the year and they're transitioning for recouping towards next, which on one hand, you know, it sucks that 2021 that we had such high aspirations for has turned out that way. But we can also understand from the business side of things being able to take that next step forward. Jason, we are an hour 45 in. I literally could probably go on for another 2 hours with you. The listeners have been loving this. I know you turned off your chat a long time ago, but they are having a blast. Listen to you. You're hitting on all the points, and they are vibing. So as we get out of here, Brittany says, hope equals Chicago, reality equals Arizona. I think that's a really good point. And Brittany's quickly elevating up the chat rankings here. We see you, Brittany. You are
just
doing
those rankings.
Adjust the rankings immediately. So we'll see what happens. Again, next week, the state of the franchise will be a episode next week. Will be maybe arguably the biggest one if they do lose, because then the state of the franchise is in flux 100%. There's no way to look about it. Like we've been optimistic for a lot of this time, but if they lose against the Chicago Bears, oh my goodness, the state of the franchise is really up for grabs. Any last parting thoughts before we leave our fans? And again, always tell them where to find you and your work. Make sure you like and subscribe to Jay. This man's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I love that we do this, Brad. I mean, you know, me and you, you know, we have a friendship outside of this, so it's always easy for us to do this. You know, me and you, this is always a blast, and you have a great audience, and it's always fun to do this. And I think that you know, you can highlight the things that are going wrong while also who could punt a ball further, Spicy Aponte or Spicy. Oh man, look. I'm not putting up $100 on that, one, because I don't have it, and two, I know I'll lose. This man's legs are massive. I promise you, in real life. When we first met in Mobile, just to give you a quick little story before we go, when we first met in Mobile, we were talking offensive line techniques, and this is literally the first time that we met face to face. And Brad grabbed my shirt and just lightly tugged on it and literally almost threw me out of the window of the house in the Airbnb. So this is a massive man. Like, I understand it. Look, he's a lovable giant, right? Like, he's just a big bear, right? Like, he's just, you know, but at the same time, this man's legs are massive, and I have no doubt that he's going to punt that thing way further than I could. So I don't want to put that $100 up, but hey, look, you know, follow me on Twitter at Jason Aponte 2103. Subscribe to the YouTube, Jason Aponte. And if you go, actually, I'm running a giveaway with Warriors World for the Terrell Owens shirts that they have, which are dope. Him standing on the star. It's all you have to do is make sure that you're following me, following Warriors World, and sub to the channel, and just provide proof. So check out my Twitter so you can be entered with a chance to win those super dope shirts as well too. So that's really what I got going on. Sprint Right Option Podcast, you know, wherever you guys get your audio. Yeah, exactly, Sean. I promise you, man. He didn't even really put much force into it, but I went like flying. Again, I weigh 175 pounds. I'm 6'5", but he literally was just like, whoop, like literally almost tossed me out the club by accident. But I knew that he didn't mean to do it. I know he didn't mean to do it, but
that was so funny, bro. I remember that in real time, and you were just like, dude, like I was like, we're doing the push pull. We're understanding leverage between offensive defensive line and the push pull move. And I was like, Jason, put all your weight into me. And he's like, I am. I was like, put more into me. And we did the little push pull, and he was like, oh my God. That was hilarious. Never gonna forget that Mobile trip at the Senior Bowl. We are both excited because we both got our emails from the Senior Bowl that we are back in, locked and loaded. Our media credentials are all ready to go, and we're going to have a squad this year. We had a squad last year, but we are going to be 49ers, Twitter, social media, content creators. We are going to be deep in Mobile. So the draft content this coming year, get ready, because although it's not great when we lose, and yes, we don't have a first-round pick, all that good stuff, but let's say the season doesn't go how we want to, we always have fun in the offseason. So super excited about that. They're even saying Mild Aponte is better than Jason Aponte. We like that.
Told you.
So, Jason, you get a good luck with Grant tomorrow. These guys will be watching. Make sure you watch. Jason and Grant are always putting out good work. Any last thing before we get out of here, Jason?
Nope. Again, this is, every game is a must-win game. This fan base shouldn't be looking forward and looking at games and circling them as wins because, if you would have told me that would have lost to the Colts, stuff like that, so yeah, no, just win every week. The goal should be 1-0 at the end of the week. And, if there's any sort of hope towards, the playoffs, it starts this week. And I'm going to predict the 49ers to win. All they have to do is be themselves, execute. They should be fine going into Soldier Field, and I'll be there. Anybody who is watching that's actually going to be in Chicago, pull up to John Chapman's party, 49ersrushroadtrip.com, so you can secure your tickets to that and the tailgate. Let's have a beer, let's talk, and let's talk about some football, man. And I can't wait to get to the Windy City. I'm pulling up in some fly merch, man. Yeah, Vish is going out there too. He'll be out there as well. I got some merch saved up for this that I haven't really dipped out in yet. So I'm going to be pulling up in some different drip this time. So, if you're around, come by, have a beer. Let's talk about the 49ers and let's have some fun. And let's stop focusing on all the negatives and just remember that, hey, we get to go watch a football game and we still get to have a little bit of fun. So, yeah, we can be all pressed and everything and be upset, but at the same time, we only get a certain amount of weeks of football. So let's try to enjoy as much of it as we can because it does go very fast. We're already in week 8 right now.
I mean, Jason, I'm not going to lie. I was pretty pissed off getting ready to start the show. Like I was actually expecting this to kind of be a downer show, but somehow I feel like we're ending it on pretty good energy. I feel like we're able to look at these things more optimistically, and we'll see what that means. Again, no one's holding their breath over here because they haven't done it up until this point, but there is still time to the ship and get it going down the right path. We'll see what happens against Chicago. Again, follow Jason Aponte wherever he is on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all over the place. Make sure you're following Jason. And before we get out of here, I do want to thank all the listeners. I mean, we did some pretty decent numbers in here for the time being, and the commentary in the chat continues to be next level. So you guys, I think, are a big reason why the energy might have been kind of crappy, at least on my end up first. But I think Jason coming on and you guys in the chat really brought me back to life. And exactly. Comments are the MVP. You guys in the chat really do make this channel move. So we really do appreciate it. It's been a blast. We essentially kind of got like a mini podcast thing going. We're doing a weekly show. So Jason will be on next Wednesday for our State of the Franchise segment, and we'll talk all things 49ers. For the meantime, be safe. Get prepared for a messy game. Could go either way, but at the end of the day, we still love our Niners. Thank you, as always, Jason, and we will absolutely be doing this again on Wednesday, hopefully talking about a Niners W. Peace, everybody.